Welcome to Stories by Mr. Best. Today's story is about betrayal, silence, and the power of a father's love. What happens when a man loses his daughter not by distance, but by manipulation? And what if the truth was never gone, just waiting for its moment? Stay with us, because this one will stay with you long after it ends. I came home that evening expecting the usual sounds, Lily's cartoons echoing from the living room, Vanessa humming off-key while sorting laundry, the smell of whatever frozen meal she'd half-heartedly microwaved. But instead, there was silence. A silence that felt rehearsed. I called out once, then again, louder. No answer. The lights were off. The coat rack was empty. Her wedding ring was gone from the dish by the sink. I opened Lily's room and saw the drawers gutted, the stuffed animals gone. It was like they'd never lived here. My heart started pounding, not with fear, but with understanding. She'd left me, and she'd taken our daughter. On the counter sat a handwritten note, folded twice and placed like a trap. It read, "I can't do this anymore. You were never present. Not for me. Not for Lily. We deserve better. Don't contact us. Everything will go through my lawyer." No signature. Just cold ink on cold paper. I stood there reading it over and over, trying to match the words with the woman I married. Vanessa had always been impatient, always critical. But this was premeditated. She hadn't stormed out after a fight. She'd planned this. Waited until I was too far into my routines to notice the distance she'd been building. And now she was gone, dragging my daughter behind her like luggage. I sat down on the edge of our bed, still trying to breathe. There was no anger yet, just confusion. I'd worked 2 jobs to support them. I'd missed birthdays, yes, but to make sure she had groceries, and Lily had dance lessons. I didn't cheat. I didn't drink. I didn't raise my voice. I gave them everything except time, and now I was being erased for it. As if love could be measured in hours punched on a clock instead of sacrifices made in silence. I checked my phone. No texts. No missed calls. No goodbye from Lily. Just a legal number I didn't recognize, sitting there like a warning sign. I called it anyway. A paralegal picked up. Cold, robotic. "Vanessa Pierce is requesting sole custody and temporary child support arrangements. You'll be served documents within the week. We advise you to retain legal representation immediately." I asked if I could speak to my wife. They said no. I asked if Lily was okay. They said, "Your concern has been noted." And just like that, my own daughter became a line item on someone's docket. I was no longer a father. I was an opponent. I didn't know it yet. But this was the beginning of the cruelest battle I'd ever fight. That night, I sat alone in a house that felt like a crime scene. Her perfume still hung in the hallway. Lily's favorite cereal box sat open on the counter. And I realized something. Vanessa hadn't just walked out. She'd declared war. And the first casualty was trust. The first time I saw Lily again was 3 weeks later. Court-ordered visitation, supervised. 1 hour in a sterile family center with brightly colored walls and furniture that looked like it belonged in a preschool classroom. I hadn't hugged her in 21 days. She looked taller, older, and quieter. She walked in holding a counselor's hand, her eyes darting around the room like it was unfamiliar territory. When she saw me, there was no run into my arms moment. No smile. Just a small, forced wave and a stiff hi. Something in her voice sounded coached. I knelt down, arms open, but she didn't move. "Mommy says I shouldn't hug you unless I want to," she said, like she was reciting something she'd practiced. The counselor glanced at me, then back at Lily. "That's okay," I said softly. "You don't have to." I sat down, gave her space, and tried to just talk. I asked about school, her favorite shows, her best friend Hannah. She answered every question, but her words felt distant, like someone else had filled her with lines to read. Not my Lily. Not the girl who used to sit on my lap and braid my beard with jelly sticky fingers. Over the next few visits, it became painfully obvious Vanessa wasn't just keeping me at a distance. She was actively reprogramming my daughter against me. Lily started repeating phrases that no child should ever know. "You were never around. Mommy says you didn't love us right. She said you only bought presents to feel better." Each word hit harder than any weapon. And the worst part was, I couldn't correct her. The court order was clear, no negative talk about the other parent. Meanwhile, Vanessa weaponized Lily's voice like a shield, knowing the system would never punish her for turning my own child against me. One day, Lily asked me, "Why didn't you come to my dance recital?" My heart stopped. I hadn't even known there was one. I looked her in the eye and said, "I would have come if I'd been invited, sweetheart." She blinked. "Mommy said you didn't care." My voice cracked as I answered, "That's not true." But even as I said it, I knew she didn't believe me. Why would she? I was the ghost in her life now. The shadow mom pointed at when she needed someone to blame for the unhappiness she caused herself. I started keeping a log, every visit, every word Lily said that seemed planted. I saved every ignored email, every birthday card I mailed that got returned to sender. I recorded every phone call that ended with Vanessa hanging up. It wasn't for court yet, it was for me. To remind myself that I wasn't going crazy, that the girl I raised hadn't truly turned on me, even if her words had. She was still in there somewhere, under the noise her mother whispered into her ear each night. The most heartbreaking moment came during a painting activity at the center. I asked Lily to draw her family. She painted Vanessa holding her hand and a blank space on the other side. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing to the empty figure. "That's Daddy," she whispered. "Mom says he's not real anymore." That's when I knew this wasn't just about custody. This was about identity. Vanessa wasn't trying to win custody. She was trying to erase me from our daughter's memory. And I refused to let that happen. I didn't yell. I didn't file a counterattack yet. I just added that drawing to the pile. Because every whisper she planted was another seed of truth I'd one day expose. And when the time came, I'd have more than just words. I'd have the proof of what she tried to bury. Silence was the hardest weapon I ever had to wield. Every instinct screamed at me to fight louder, to scream back, to tell Lily the truth, that I wasn't the villain, that her mother was rewriting history one whisper at a time. But the moment I even hinted at Vanessa's manipulations, I'd be breaking the court's rules. So I bit my tongue, again and again, while my daughter looked at me like a stranger. Every visit became a test of patience. I smiled through gritted teeth. I played games with a hollow heart. And every night after, I sat alone with nothing but proof and pain. Vanessa was winning the social war. Her Facebook was filled with curated photos of her and Lily smiling at pumpkin patches, birthday parties, holidays I hadn't even known existed. Captions like "Single mom life isn't easy, but I'd do anything for my daughter," and "Strong women raise strong daughters" drew comments and likes from people who had no idea they were cheering on a lie. And me? I stayed silent. I posted nothing. I answered no rumors. I let the story build around me, knowing that when the time came, the truth wouldn't need to scream. It would stand on its own. I kept working, paid every dime of child support, even when it meant skipping meals. I never missed a payment, never asked for a break. I documented everything: bank transfers, mailed gifts, even receipts for toys she claimed I never bought. I made spreadsheets, labeled folders, saved screenshots. When her lawyer accused me of being absent, I'd have months of call logs showing unanswered attempts. When she said I'd refused medical expenses, I'd show the insurance claims I filed and paid without complaint. It was a slow war, a war of attrition. And every time I stayed quiet, I laid another brick in the wall I'd eventually use to protect myself and my daughter. The silence nearly cost me my sanity. There were nights I stared at the ceiling and replayed the way Lily looked at me, as if searching for someone she couldn't remember. Nights I wondered if maybe I had failed, if I'd worked too hard, missed too much. But then I'd open the folder labeled Truth, scroll through the voicemails Vanessa left during her angrier moments, cursing, threatening, mocking, and remind myself I wasn't the problem. I wasn't perfect, but I had never been what she painted me to be. I wasn't a ghost. She was the one haunting the mind of a child who just wanted peace. One day, while cleaning the apartment, I found the old iPad we used to share. It hadn't been touched in over a year. I powered it on, mostly out of habit, and what I found nearly made me drop it. Vanessa's old messages, unarchived, unsent, still sat in a cloud sync she never shut off. There were photos she'd sent someone else of Lily crying, with captions like, "He'll never see her again, he doesn't deserve her." Screenshots of her telling a friend, "I don't care if I have to lie in court, he'll never win." It was the smoking gun I hadn't expected to find. A gift wrapped in digital carelessness. I backed up everything. I encrypted it. I added it to the file. From that day forward, my silence wasn't just a tactic. It was a countdown. I knew court was coming. I knew she was preparing to take full custody, to erase me legally the way she tried emotionally. But this time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't helpless. I was ready. The morning of the hearing, I ironed my shirt 3 times, even though it was already crisp. It wasn't about looking good. It was about looking composed, strong, not like the man Vanessa had described in court filings, the emotionally unstable, unfit father. I arrived 30 minutes early and sat quietly outside the courtroom, my hands resting on the binder in my lap. That binder had everything. Every message, every receipt, every lie she'd thought would stay buried. I wasn't there to win revenge. I was there to win my daughter's truth back. Vanessa walked in 15 minutes later with her lawyer and a practiced expression of concern. She wore a pale blue blazer, the kind meant to make her look soft, innocent, maternal. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her confidence was radiating. I could see it in her walk, her posture, the way she leaned in to whisper to her attorney. They weren't worried. They were certain they'd already won. That the judge would see the deadbeat dad they'd painted, the man too busy working to be a parent, the one who abandoned his family. What they didn't know was that I hadn't come to plead. I'd come to present. The judge entered. We stood. The hearing began with Vanessa's attorney delivering a performance that could have won an award. Tears, sighs, claims of emotional trauma, and protecting the child's best interests. Vanessa nodded along with every word like a metronome, her face the picture of sorrow and sacrifice. She claimed I hadn't shown up for key moments in Lily's life, that I hadn't paid enough, that I hadn't called, that my presence was damaging, my absence intentional. I said nothing. Not yet. When it was my turn, my lawyer stood and placed the binder gently on the bench. Your Honor, she said, we'd like to introduce Exhibit A through Exhibit K, including call logs, financial records, time-stamped video clips, and digital correspondence obtained through shared device access, as allowed by the court. The room shifted. Vanessa's smirk vanished like a light turned off. Her lawyer leaned in fast, whispering now with urgency instead of calm. The judge motioned for the clerk to review the files. Then the audio started playing. Vanessa's voice, not in a courtroom, in her own home, whispering into Lily's ear. Daddy doesn't care about you anymore, baby. If he did, he'd be here. Another clip. I don't care what he says. He's not your real parent if he can't even show up. Then screenshots. Her laughing with a friend. Let him cry. I've got the judge and the school believing he's a ghost dad. Each piece landed like thunder. Every lie cracked open in public. Vanessa went pale. She stood up and tried to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. Mrs. Pierce, please sit. Her lawyer asked for a recess. Denied. This was happening now. Not on her terms. Then came the moment that silenced even the back row of the courtroom. A photo Lily's drawing. Her family. Mommy holding her hand. Daddy, a blank figure. Then, a clip of Lily's own voice during supervised visitation. Mom says he's not real anymore. The courtroom, once so certain, now sat in stunned silence. Vanessa finally spoke. I was protecting her. He was never there. He was always working. He didn't love us. But her voice cracked. Because she knew. She knew she'd been caught not just in a lie, but in a campaign. A crusade against a man who'd done nothing but endure in silence. And now the silence spoke back. The judge leaned forward, slow and deliberate. Mrs. Pierce, you've not only obstructed visitation rights, you've actively engaged in what this court recognizes as parental alienation. You've tampered with your daughter's perception of her father, with evidence so clear it borders on psychological abuse. Her lawyer looked down. Vanessa wept into her hands. And then came the ruling. Joint legal custody revoked. Sole custody granted to me, with monitored visitation for Vanessa pending future review. Full access to Lily's school, medical, and personal records was restored to me immediately. Vanessa's request for child support? Denied. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like justice. Cold, quiet, final. But the moment that broke me came as I walked out into the hallway, Lily waiting beside the social worker. She looked up at me, nervous. I knelt, again, like I had that first day in the visitation room. And this time, she hugged me. Tight. I thought getting custody would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The real challenge came after, the slow and delicate process of undoing the damage. Winning in court gave me the right to be a father again, but it didn't hand me Lily's trust. That trust had been chipped away day by day, year by year, through the gentle poison of Vanessa's words. Now, I had to help her unlearn every lie, without breaking her heart further. Because the truth, no matter how justified, could still hurt a child if given all at once. The first night Lily came home felt like moving into a museum of memories. Her old room still had some of her favorite books, stuffed animals, faded posters, like a time capsule from before things fell apart. She looked around like she was walking into someone else's past. "I remember this," she said, touching a framed photo of the three of us at the park. Then came the question I'd been dreading. "Why did Mommy say you didn't want me?" I sat down beside her, took a deep breath, and replied, "Because sometimes, when grown-ups are hurting, they say things that aren't true to protect themselves. But I've always wanted you, Lily." Every day. She didn't respond, just sat quietly, looking at her shoes. I didn't push. Trust isn't demanded. It's earned. And so, I began a routine, not with grand speeches, but with presence. I walked her to school, made her favorite breakfast, listened when she spoke, even if it was about cartoons or classmates I didn't know. Every small moment became an offering, a brick in the road back to her heart. Slowly, her guard lowered. Her hugs lingered longer. Her eyes softened when I tucked her in. She even asked me to help with a school project, a family tree. I almost cried. A few weeks later, her therapist, assigned during the custody ruling, called me in for a private session. "She's asking a lot of questions," she said. "About what's true. About what really happened." I nodded. "I've tried not to say anything bad about her mom," I said. The therapist smiled gently. "And that's the right instinct. But she deserves some truth at her level." So that night, I sat with Lily on the couch, her head against my shoulder, and told her just enough. Not about court, not about audio files or folders or manipulation. Just this: your mom and I see the world very differently. And some of the things she told you about me weren't true. But what's true is that I've always loved you. I've always wanted to be here. She looked up at me with glassy eyes and whispered, "I was scared to believe that before." I hugged her tighter than I ever had. A few days later, I found a note on the refrigerator in her crooked handwriting. It read, "I'm glad I know you now. Love, Lily." It wasn't everything, but it was something. And something was everything to me. Vanessa reached out, of course. She begged, cried, apologized, claimed therapy, growth, healing. Wanted another chance, if not with me, then at least with Lily. I gave her visitation, her court order. But I watched closely. Every word, every gesture. And when Lily came home after their first visit, she didn't seem shaken. She seemed stronger. She said sorry, Lily told me. But I told her I wanted to stay here for now. I didn't push further. I just nodded, and inside, I exhaled for the first time in years. This wasn't a movie. There was no dramatic reunion, no clean ending. There was pain and healing, and days that still felt heavy. But now, there was laughter again in our home. There were movie nights, spilled popcorn, messy art projects. There was life. And there was something else, the quiet, steady voice of my daughter, the real one, not the one Vanessa crafted, calling me Dad again. People ask me if I feel vindicated. If taking Vanessa to court, winning custody, and watching the lies collapse around her gave me a sense of triumph. But the truth is, I didn't want revenge. I didn't want anyone to fall. I just wanted my daughter back. I wanted to hear her laugh without fear, to see her eyes light up when I entered the room, to tuck her in at night without wondering if she saw me as the villain. I didn't need to win. I needed to be a father again. And now, I finally was. Vanessa faded out of our lives quietly. Court-mandated visitation became less frequent. Eventually, she stopped calling as much. I think part of her realized the damage she'd done, not just to me, but to Lily too. And maybe she carried that guilt. Maybe she still does. I don't know. And honestly, I stopped needing to know. The version of her that tried to erase me was a chapter one closed the day Lily chose to come home without being told. There were nights Lily would ask questions about the past, simple things, like, why didn't we all live together anymore? Or, did you and Mommy love each other once? I answered truthfully, but gently. We did. But sometimes people change, and love changes too. What didn't change was how much I've always loved you. That answer always seemed to be enough. Children don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. And I was finally present. Fully, completely, without permission or barriers. We started new traditions: Sunday pancakes, bedtime riddles, painting on the porch. I still kept the binder in a locked drawer. Not as a weapon, but as a reminder. A reminder of what it took to get here. What it cost to stay calm when I was being erased. What it meant to love someone enough to fight for them even when they didn't know they needed rescuing. That binder wasn't filled with evidence anymore. It was filled with resilience. Years passed. Lily grew into her own person now. Sharp, kind, and curious. She once told me, during a school project on heroes, that she wrote about me. I asked her why. She said, because even when everyone said you were the bad guy, you didn't say anything mean. You just kept showing up. That moment meant more to me than any verdict ever could. Sometimes the biggest victories don't look like courtroom applause or public vindication. Sometimes they look like a child reaching for your hand again, or calling you dad, like they never stopped. I don't tell this story for sympathy or celebration. I tell it because there are other fathers out there who've been painted invisible, good men, quiet ones, who are losing time and truth to lies they can't defend against without breaking the rules. This story is for them. Because if I learned anything through it all, it's this: truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to last long enough to be heard. And when it finally is, it brings everything and everyone home again. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Drop a comment below: have you, or someone you know, ever been silenced by a lie? We read every message, and your story matters. Until next time, keep believing in quiet strength and patient truth.